All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about the Browns and some of their comments regarding two of their players, Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb. So Browns GM Andrew Berry, he spoke at the combine. He talked about Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb. Um, yeah, and one of the things um, that I mentioned because I wanted to talk about it was, there's some rumors, speculation that maybe the Browns end up cutting Nick Chubb. Um, now, Barry did say that, he doesn't want that last, that game in Pittsburgh where he got hurt. He doesn't want that to be the last time that Nick Chubb, um, you know, is running the football for the Browns. Um, but what I was looking at is his contract situation, and that if they did cut him, they would save almost $12 million in salary cap space with only $4 million in dead cap. Um, However, he did say, like I said, keeping Chubb is a priority for the team. Um, you know, they're in full support with Chubb. Yeah, I mean, what happened in Week 2 against the Steelers? That was horrific. That was a horrific injury. And and Nick Chubb's a guy that you know has been a great player for the Browns for a long time now. Is one of the more consistent running backs in the NFL. And this was not the first time that he had a knee injury. It also happened in college, I believe. So it was just a tough injury. And again, I mean, the season there were tons of injuries, and it really was unfortunate that it had to happen. And Chubb's a guy that has been relatively healthy his whole career with the Browns. I mean, there was he's missed some time, but he's been relatively healthy, and just it was unfortunate what had to happen to him. And yeah, I mean, you're coming off of a significant knee injury, and yeah, talk about running backs and how they age. It's when they're getting in their late 20s. I said this yesterday talking about Barkley. Yeah, they're getting older, and again, it doesn't help when you're injured, coming back from a significant injury. So, I could see why there's some speculation out there that the Browns could cut him. But it seems like, from what I'm seeing, maybe that's not the case. I also did see that the Browns were unlikely to bring back Kareem Hunt, and they're going to roll with who they have. They have, Jerome Ford, who did a nice job, so he's probably going to be the primary backup going into next season. And we'll, again, this is something we'll have to keep an eye on with Nick Chubb. But also, he did talk about Deshaun Watson, and he said that Deshaun Watson is expected to start throwing in March as part of his rehabilitation from his season-ending shoulder surgery. Barry expressed optimism about Watson's progress and eagerness to see him back on the field during the spring. And listen, this is a Browns team that dealt with a ton of injuries in 2023. And even though they did have a lot of injuries, the team still finished 11-6. And that is why Kevin Stefanski, or as he was called at the NFL Honors, Steven Stefanski, he won Coach of the Year. Listen, next year's going to be a big year for the Browns. And, if you got a healthy Chubb and a healthy Deshaun Watson, I mean, yeah, this team's going to be good. Now, Deshaun Watson did not play great before he got hurt. Was not playing good. Then he gets hurt. I mean, first of all, the Browns had that big win against the Ravens. Big comeback win, right? And I think that might have been the last game that Deshaun Watson played before he was ruled out for the rest of the season. But let me just, and it's just, he ended up finishing the season. So he had 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, 84.3 passer rating, over 1,100 yards passing. That was the last game that he ended up playing. Was against the Ravens. 20 of 34, 213 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Yeah, so it was like, wow, signature win. And then it comes out, yeah, he's out for the season. Shoulder injury. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, it's not like he was playing great. And, even when he, started some games in 2022, he didn't look good either. Now, again, that's because of the huge layoff. I mean, it's been a while since he last played. But, this is going to be a big year for the Browns coming up in 2024. And if you can have these two guys healthy, you're in good shape. I mean, again, the Browns dealt with a ton of injuries. You had 5 different starting quarterbacks, including Jeff Driscoll, who they kind of signed just spot start. See, again, now it's like I'm talking baseball. They brought him in just to play the final game of the regular season. But yeah, you had Driscoll start a game. You had P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR, and Joe Flacco, and of course Watson. It's just, yeah, it was a mess. But this team still somehow won 11 games, which is unbelievable. And again, that's a credit to Kevin Stefanski. And that coaching staff. And you know what? And you know what? That top defense as well. But yeah, I mean, they had some injuries on the offensive line, running game as well. They had to sign Kareem Hunt back because he was still a free agent. When Chubb got hurt, they brought him in. But yeah, I mean, they still were able to make the playoffs. And yeah, the playoff game didn't go how they wanted it to. I mean, the Texans, really brought it. That we really didn't see. I mean, we did see January Joe for a little bit, but then, that kind of flamed out. A couple of pick sixes, and yeah, Browns ended up going home early against the Texans. But yeah, I mean, listen, with all the injuries they had, it was unbelievable that they were able to get into the playoffs. And look, the Deshaun Watson trade has not really panned out. And you look at, and again, just talk about the Texans. Texans were the team that traded him, and the Texans, they won the division, won a playoff game, and the future is bright for them. The Browns, they're going to be a good team, but you thought after it did take a couple of years, but the Texans, they're back up to being now a good team going into next year, and they have so much cap space that, again, like I've been talking about recently, they could be big spenders. So, but yeah, I mean, the Browns, they're playing in, I mean, the AFC South, like I said, that's going to be a more competitive division. Probably, arguably, the best division in football is the AFC North. I mean, listen, we could talk about the Steelers and their quarterback situation, but with Mike Tomlin, that team does not finish with a losing record, ever. With Mike Tomlin. Even in these couple of years post, the Ben Roethlisberger era, they're still a competitive team. And they made the playoffs somehow. That was another team that made the playoffs, and you're like, how did they do it? But yeah, you're going to have a healthy Joe Burrow coming back next year, hopefully. The Ravens are going to be back. Division's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Now, the Browns, they had, they did beat the Ravens. They beat the Bengals in the beginning of the year when Burrow was still dealing with the calf injury. But also, I feel like this doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's the fact that I've probably mentioned this like way back during the season, but the Browns own Joe Burrow. Especially in Cleveland. The week 1 game, Browns Bengals, that was an ugly game. And I even said, I'm like, yeah, the Browns played good against Burrow, but I still ended up picking, of course, the Bengals because that's just how that's just how my mind works with this, my spread pool. Which, hey, that's the first time I've talked about that in a while. Well, but we'll have to wait till next year to bring that back up again. But anyways, yeah, I mean, listen, the Browns, they could definitely, if these guys are healthy next year, yeah, they got a shot at winning the division. You saw how David Njoku was playing with Flacco. I mean, he was unbelievable when Flacco took over. You still got Amari Cooper who's getting older. They did trade for Elijah Moore. You want to see they need to get another receiver, I would say, if I'm the Browns. And the defense, of course, led by Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year. Listen, this team is going to be competing for a playoff spot. And listen, they were able to do it even when they weren't healthy and get into the playoffs. But if you got these guys healthy, that definitely makes them a better team. I mean, even though Deshaun Watson has not been great, I mean, right now I would, you would take him over PJ Walker and DTR, Jeff Driscoll. I mean, listen, Flacco did a nice job, but Flacco over the course of a 17-game season, I mean, I don't know about that, especially at his age. But now Flacco, I mean, who knows what Flacco's future is? I mean, I think I think that's it, But and it was nice. It was nice to see a quarterback that I grew up watching come back and, light it up for a little bit. It was cool to see, because again, quarterbacks that I grew up watching, a lot of those guys are gone, or are going to be. What remains. I mean, you got Rodgers, Stafford. Those guys are the next couple to, call it a career at some point, which is going to stink. Because you grow up watching these guys, and listen, we're in great hands. Like I've been saying, we're in great hands with the quarterbacks we have now. But again, it's just going to be sad when the final couple guys from my kid years, when they call it a career, it's going to be sad. So I mean, it already is sad with most of them being gone. But yeah, so but again with the Browns, back to the Browns, just something we got to keep an eye on. But yeah, I mean, with Chubb, it's like, oh, they could cut him, and then you got the general manager saying, well, we want to make sure we keep him. And I hope they do, and I hope, again, Nick Chubb's another guy that I hope he bounces back next year and, and plays well, and the Browns are going to need him. But again, he's getting older, coming off of a significant knee injury. Yeah, it's going to be tough, but, I'm hoping for the best for him, and, again, we'll see how Deshaun Watson, responds to his rehab. And, next year, if he's healthy, is it going to be more of the same before he got hurt? Or is he going to, find, himself back to, how he was when he was playing, great football with the Texans? Are we going to see that Deshaun Watson? So, but again, only time will tell. Only time will tell. So with that being said, we are going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we'll talk about a few quarterbacks. We'll talk about Zach Wilson. We'll talk about other quarterbacks as well. Jared Goff, Kyler Murray. We'll talk about them and a potential new contract for Jared Goff. Also, it seems like the Cardinals are officially committing to Kyler Murray. With their social media posts. So that is what we will get into when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.